Welcome to the P.T.S.D. podcast with your host, comedian and military veteran, Bernard the Laugh Therapist Hines, where we discuss P.T.S.D., processing traumatic situations differently, and give you tools to help you overcome the stigma of seeking help. If you're ready to be inspired, then welcome to the stigma-free zone. Here's your host, the Laugh Therapist himself, Bernard Hines.
What up, everybody? What up, everybody? This is your boy, Bernard Hines, a.k.a. the Laugh Therapist. And thank you and welcome to the PTSD podcast, Processing Traumatic Situations Differently. Here, we try to inform, enlighten, and become advocates for one another as we learn more productive ways to process our trauma. Always remember, though, as a therapist, I am not licensed, y'all. I am just medicated. Welcome to the stigma-free zone. How y'all doing today? This is your boy, Bernard Hines. Thank y'all. Listen, we have a great show today. We have Miss Brooke Bralove out of Maryland. She's going to be talking to us today about advanced accelerated resolution therapy. Listen, y'all, we're going to be talking about some great stuff. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and bring her on right now. How you doing, Brooke?
Hi, Bernard. Nice to see you.
It's nice to see you, and it's nice. Thank you for being on. And I know I should not have said advanced. I should have just said accelerated. So so how you, Miss Brooke? Thank you for being a part of this show. You are doing some great things, and we're going to hear a lot of things, a lot of stuff about what you're doing. And first of all, tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. So I am originally from Maryland, and I live about 2 miles from where I grew up.
Okay.
And I am a licensed clinical social worker and psychotherapist. I've been in private practice in Bethesda, Maryland for 19 years.
Okay.
I got my master's degree in social work from Columbia University, and I predominantly work with women. I'm a sex therapist. Okay. I also do I'm a certified Daring Way facilitator, which means I am certified in Brene Brown's shame resilience curriculum. So I do weekend workshops for women to take a deep dive into shame and vulnerability. But what I really want to talk about today, and I'm most excited about, is accelerated resolution therapy. And I can't wait to share it with you.
All right, y'all. We're going to be talking about some accelerated resolution therapy. And I know somebody out there saying, what is that? Stay tuned. Pay attention. We're going to tell y'all all about it. So, Ms. Brooke, you can go ahead and dive right into it. What is ART, as they call it?
Yeah. So you can call it ART or ART, whatever you prefer. I call it ART. So ART is an evidence-based treatment modality that uses rapid eye movement and voluntary image replacement to change the way the brain stores distressing images and sensations.
Okay.
It's very brief. It usually only requires 1 to 5 sessions to treat a variety of issues: trauma, PTSD, anxiety, depression, phobias, chronic pain, chronic illness, OCD, relationship problems, grief. I mean, the list is kind of endless, which is super exciting. But certainly what it's most known for is for trauma and PTSD.
And I must say, I have did this with my therapist. I really did. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I remember doing it, and looked it up now, and I remember doing it. I didn't know what it was called, I was dependent, but yeah, it is good. It is good.
Well, and it's interesting. You may have done EMDR, which is different than ART.
Okay, got it. Got it. See, that's why I tell y'all, I'm not licensed. That's why I had to license people up here.
Yeah, that's right. So, but this is important, and you're bringing right away. You're bringing up an important piece, which is most people have heard of EMDR, which stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing.
Okay.
Which like art, is a treatment that uses bilateral brain stimulation. EMDR uses eye movements, but they often use, sort of bilateral sounds or tapping, buzzers that go bilaterally, whereas art really focuses on the eye movements.
Okay.
And so the creator of art is Lainey Rosenzweig, who's a wonderful therapist. And she took an EMDR training in 2008 and basically said, that's awesome, but I think I want to change it up a little and make it even better.
Okay.
And so that's how art was born. And so they do share, similarities, but there are a few differences that I think are important as people are trying to choose, what treatment do they want to pursue? So first of all, art manages and works with images and sensations.
Okay.
Whereas EMDR uses more thoughts and feelings, like core beliefs. And in art, we believe that if you change the images, you change the beliefs at the same time. That's kind of automatically what happens. Art has more of a very specific protocol. EMDR can sort of meander and sort of you go with the flow almost more like psychotherapy.
Okay.
Whereas art has a very clear process that, again, you have to be trained in to do.
I mean, that's good that you say that, because when I do be doing my EMDR, my therapist will say, let's go with that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's a very right. The common phrases I think in EMDR are notice that.
Right.
And let's go with that.
Let's go with that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. I'm learning, y'all.
Yeah, right. So that is a difference. So really art ends up being kind of briefer. EMDR can last a little bit longer. Art sort of cuts right to the chase.
Okay.
Does the steps that Lainey has figured out are healing and successful. And we do that. We get you out of there in anywhere from 60 to 90 minutes per session.
Okay.
And send you on your way. And I do want to say that while it is 1 to 5 sessions, I think there's only been maybe one time, if any, that I've actually needed to see someone for 5 sessions for the same kind of incident or issue they're coming in with.
Okay.
Now, what does happen is when people, let's say somebody comes in because they had a sexual assault they want to process.
And that's big now. That's real
Unfortunately,
big.
Yes. Very, very, very big. And really important to process and work through. But so someone might come to me and say, I want to work on this. Well, we may kind of resolve that in 1 to 3 sessions. But then they may decide that actually they want to work on some anxiety, or they may decide, actually, I have a fear of public speaking, or, I'm claustrophobic, or I really want to heal my relationship with my mother. And so people end up staying in art with me for longer, not because they're working on the same thing, but because so successful. They're like, well, let's do this. Let's tackle all my issues.
And that's amazing you said that, because that's great, because people say, well, Vernon, I know you're dealing with your PTSD, but you still in therapy. Yeah, because life happens. One thing I've learned, PTSD don't care about life, and life don't care about PTSD. They're going to happen. They're going to collide. And I want to have someone that I can go to and be able to talk about certain things.
Absolutely. And I want to be clear. I mean, the thing about art that is so different is that it requires almost no talking. So when I see someone for an intake session, I basically let them know that I'm going to ask their story and why they're there. And I'm going to ask them to tell me, about their trauma or their issue in the beginning. And then basically that is the most we'll ever talk again.
Wow.
Because in art, the healing comes through the eye movements related to imagining things that have happened to you that you want to process.
Okay.
It's not through talking. And so what is very helpful and provides a lot of hope for people is when they come to me and they say, I have tried every other kind of therapy. I've
Mm-hmm.
tried, exposure therapy and somatic experiencing and cognitive behavioral and DBT, but I still can't quite get either over something or through something, or something
Okay.
is still haunting me. The great news is you don't have to keep talking about it. And for a lot of
Mm.
people, and I'm sure you know this, for a lot of veterans, to continue to talk about what happened to them over and over again can sometimes be re-traumatizing.
Correct. It can be.
And actually, what we know is that the more you talk about something, each time you talk about something traumatic, it actually worsens in your brain.
Mm.
And so we are not going to keep talking about it.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that talk therapy isn't incredibly useful and healing in and of itself.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that I do think when you're dealing with triggers and,
Yeah.
when if you, I mean, the other night, perfect example, 4th of July.
4th of July, yes.
How many veterans, how many people, whether it's school shootings,
Mm-hmm.
were traumatized
Correct.
that night.
Correct.
Right. And I was really holding that and really feeling quite heavy about it. Because I know that many people were incredibly triggered, upset,
Mm-hmm.
afraid, went into fight, flight, or freeze. And that's what people want to get rid of. They
Right.
don't want to go into a panic attack when a car backfires, right?
Correct.
And so that's the part that we're trying to heal, is so that you are not actually going into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn in the moment in your daily life, because it
Okay.
sneaks up on you, right?
Yes, it does. Yes, yes, it does. And the thing about the 4th of July, I have gotten to a point now that I know 4th of July is going to be fireworks. I know that. So I prepare myself. Now, on the 7th and the 8th, I'm not prepared for those.
Yeah.
So if you still find them then, that's when it gets me. It really doesn't get me at the 4th because I put it in my mind. I'm thinking it's going to be fireworks. It's going to be, but that takes away from some other things in my life because I'm so concentrated on that.
Of
So,
course. Yeah. I mean, all your energy goes into, trying to keep your nervous system
Correct.
calm, so that when it does happen, you remind yourself that's expected. I knew that was going to happen. I can name what it is immediately. But as you said, 3 days later, that certainty is gone. I can't 100% tell you those are fireworks. And
Correct.
therefore, I imagine you have a body response. And
Wow.
that's what art changes. You will
Okay.
no longer have that body response, nor will you have the images of what happened to you for the original trauma.
Okay.
And so with art, we say, keep the knowledge, lose the pain. It is not hypnosis. You will never not be able to report the facts of what happened to you. That
Okay.
is part of your life. You wouldn't want to actually forget.
Correct.
Because that's not reality. But what you do lose is the way those images kind of haunt you, the way you can recall them, the way you can see them like it was yesterday.
Correct.
And that's what we change.
Okay.
And so I became an art therapist because I had a traumatic breakup in 2017, and I just couldn't get through it. I was in therapy. The talk therapy wasn't working. I tried a couple other things. I just wasn't really moving on.
Correct.
And I did 2 sessions of art, and I was, much better. And I just lost the intensity. I could tell you that, yeah, I had a breakup. It sucked. But I had no emotion around it anymore whatsoever.
That's good. So did art find you, or you found it?
No, I found it again as a client. I had never heard of it, like some other people. I had never heard of it. This kind of yoga teacher said, well, the only other thing I might suggest is there's this one woman in Maryland who does this thing. And, I had not heard of it, and I was desperate. I said, of course I'll try something. I'll try anything.
Right.
Especially because there are absolutely zero negative effects of art.
Okay.
So there's really, as long as you are actually sitting in the chair and complete the session, and you can stop at any point, you could choose to stop and your therapist would help you do that. But actually no one I've ever worked with has just stopped in the middle, because the thing about art is it has a resolution. That's why it's called accelerated resolution.
Okay.
So there is a resolution at the end of every session. Sometimes in EMDR, you might open up really big and get to some important, deep, vulnerable things. But then the session ends, and I think often they sort of say, well, why don't you put that on a shelf and we'll get to it later. Am I right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes, you are right.
Right. But guess what? That's hard.
Right. I keep telling y'all, I bring licensed people up here. That is so true.
Right. And so art, we don't have to do that because we resolve the issue in the session. Now, I can't guarantee that there won't be some work to do the next session on the issue, but sometimes not. I mean, I worked with, unfortunately, there was a school shooting a little over a year ago in DC, and I worked with parents, faculty, and students. And I never needed to see them more than 1 to 2 sessions, and it resolved. They stopped having the automatic response to the car door slamming, to, seeing violence on TV, right? Because I don't know about you, but for a lot of people with PTSD, they want to watch a damn movie in peace.
Woo! I'm going to tell you, there's a movie that was a couple of weeks ago called Otto. I could not. I watched it, but after I got finished, I had the suicidal ideation.
Ideation.
I had to let it go. I had to let that go because I was like, wow. I was at that point one time, just trying.
Yeah.
But then I had to go back and I went to my therapist and said, why was I still having these? And we did some more work. So that's why I say, you still can have a therapist, because when that thing pop up in you, if that was a check engine light on my car, I'm taking it straight to the car dealership.
I love that analogy. That's a great analogy.
That was a check engine in my head.
Yeah.
And I need to go and find out what was going on.
Absolutely. And I think it's so wonderful what you're doing in normalizing therapy for men, normalizing therapy for the African-American community, for the veteran community. I think it's really important because historically, those 3 communities tend not to be, that's where there's a lot of stigma. And there's stigma in a lot of communities.
Correct.
But again, this whole idea of, we don't talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
You suck it up.
That's right. Masculine. Yep. What happens here stays here. All that good stuff. Yeah. So,
but that's what leads to suicidality.
Yes.
Is the silence, the secrecy, and the shame.
The shame. That's right. That is so good.
And you're doing a great job of decreasing your own shame in the service of showing other people.
Yes. Listen, y'all, we're talking today to Miss Brooke Bralove. She is a licensed clinical social worker, amongst other things. But today, y'all, we're talking about accelerated resolution therapy, better known as ART. So is there anything else you want to talk about with the art, or what else, or some of the other things that you do?
Well, I think that the one thing I want to say about art is that, it's sort of known for trauma and PTSD, but as I mentioned, it treats so many other things. So I want to give you a couple examples.
Okay, so hold up. You can treat my wife OCD, please. Please tell me you can treat. It's driving me crazy. I can't clean up like she can. She's
right. Yes, I can.
We both have something.
Right. But yeah, it works on OCD. I had a woman who really would get triggered every time her ex-husband would text her. She would just get unbelievably anxious, panicky. We did one session, a 60-minute session on that. And since then, she says she has no reactivity whatsoever to receiving texts from him.
Wow.
None. And so imagine how good that makes her feel. And she can make better decisions for herself.
Correct.
I worked on a fear of public speaking. Someone really had a hard time doing presentations.
Mm-hmm.
We did 2 sessions, and she's lost all of that anxiety, really having almost panic attacks beforehand. That's all
Correct.
gone.
Wow.
So it's sort of endless what it can treat.
Right.
Self-esteem, body
Yes.
image. I helped
Yes.
a woman get rid of 50 years of looking in the mirror and telling herself she was ugly. We did 1 session, and she says every once in a while a thought will creep back in.
Correct.
But it's gone as quickly as it comes in.
That's good. And that's why I tell folks, I said, people say, man, but a friend of mine said, man, if people look at you, they wouldn't think you had PTSD. I said, because first of all, I have the resources and the tools to go. When I feel the engine light come on, I go get checked out.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people don't do.
Yeah.
We internalize it, because one of the things that was crazy for me when you say about the phone, my wife used to always ask me, why do you pick up the phone as soon as it rings? Or you feel you have to call somebody back if you miss a call? Because in the military, I was signal. I had a radio at all times. So if you don't call back, if you don't answer it, you thinking somebody's dead or something. So that had to play around in my mind, and I had to figure out, I'm not in war anymore. Relax. It can go to voicemail. It'll be okay. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. So interesting. And it just shows up differently depending what your history is, depending what your trauma is. Yeah.
There you go. That is so good. That is so good. Now, I know we said we wasn't going to talk about, I didn't say what we didn't say we wasn't going to talk about, but this is something that's big. Okay. Sex therapy.
Yeah.
It is with the phones and the easy access and the trauma that people, because I tell anybody, I was addicted to porn. I mean, it was my way of being secluded. You know what I'm saying? And just, and it will affect your life so bad.
Yeah. I mean, I think, sex, porn, like anything else, anything can be used to numb.
Come on now.
So, you can numb with sex, you can numb with Facebook, you can numb with food, you can numb with alcohol. There's, sort of an endless work.
Correct.
Work is a huge one that we kind of think is okay, even though it's really not. But so yes, anything to excess is usually not a good thing. And so it's not that all porn is bad at all.
Okay.
It's how you use it. What is your relationship to it? Is it something you can make a decision about? Like, I'm not going to watch porn today. And can you stick to that? We would say the same thing for alcohol.
Correct.
Do you have an alcohol problem? Well, what happens when you try to stop drinking alcohol?
That's good.
Can you do it? Can you not do it? What happens when you try to set limits? And when you find yourself violating your own boundaries, then you are moving into a very unhealthy relationship.
Brooke, that is good. That is good. When you start violating your own boundaries, oh my goodness, that if I could fit into a T-shirt right now, I'd put that on a T-shirt. But go ahead, Ms. Brooke.
Yeah, but that's important, right? It's when you try to get control of something.
Okay,
that's when you need to be real honest with yourself. How is this working for me, and how is it not? The other thing I want to normalize, though, with pornography or any other type of addiction, or sort of like a compulsive behavior, is it is meant to self-soothe.
True.
So it's not necessarily about sex per se.
Okay.
It is about, how can I quiet my mind? How can I obviously do something that feels good, right? People don't become alcoholics because they hate alcohol. They love the way it tastes in the beginning, and they like this, So, but it is about a relationship. So I always ask people, what is your relationship to pornography? What is your relationship to alcohol? Does it feel like a healthy relationship? How does alcohol help or hurt you?
Okay.
What are the impacts? And really, this is the key.
Okay.
Because people will say, there's no big deal. I just, I watch porn, not a big deal. But then you often say, how is it impacting your relationships? And then they'll tell you, well, I ignore my wife for 6 hours at a time because I'm, obsessively masturbating and watching porn.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a problem for your marriage.
Correct.
Right. And so what is the cost of the habit?
Mm.
Because I think we all need sometimes things to numb. I don't think numbing in very sort of small doses is terrible.
Okay.
But, but I would look at that as more like, let me take a break. Like, let me numb a little bit or get out of my work head by watching this one show on Netflix.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Right. So that's kind of a way to sort of get out of one mindset and transition to another. But if you're watching 10 hours of Netflix, that's probably unhealthy because it probably meant you decided not to go out to dinner with your friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. Wow. Watching Netflix in and of itself, not a problem.
Correct.
So I really encourage people to say, what is my relationship to this thing?
Okay.
And does it feel healthy? Am I in control of it? What happens when I try to stop? And here's another really important piece.
Okay.
Does it lead you to feel shame?
Woo!
Because if you're feeling shame
Come on.
about a behavior, that tells you that it's probably problematic.
That's good.
Now, if you masturbate once and you feel shame, that's probably a deeper sort of issue around childhood messages about sex and everything. Mm-hmm. But if you feel like you're a piece of crap every time you smoke pot because it's bad for you and all this other stuff, and you then aren't motivated the next day and can't do the things you're supposed to do, then it's probably a problem.
Correct. And see, I'm gonna ask this question: accelerated resolution therapy can compensate all that too?
Oh, absolutely. Any addictive behavior, alcoholism. Yes, I helped a woman in one session. She stopped. She drank wine every single day for about 6 years. Mm-hmm. After one session, she just stopped. She just doesn't drink anymore. She doesn't have the cravings or anything. It works for all of that. I worked with binge eating, helped a woman stop binge eating that had been going on for 20 to 30 years. Mm-hmm. So all of it.
And I heard people say sometimes, well, I didn't do no art therapy. I just stopped. That's for you.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
What you did. Yes. Congratulations. Gold star, t-shirt, all that. But for someone else, they might need this.
Yeah. So. And again, remember, sometimes talking about it over and over again and understanding the why over and over and over again still doesn't change behavior. Mm-hmm. I really believe that psychotherapy is moving toward techniques, modalities that are brain and body focused.
Okay.
Because for trauma lives in our bodies, and the body keeps the score. I'm sure you know that wonderful book.
Yes.
So we have to regulate our bodies, our nervous systems, so that our brains get out of, the sympathetic fight, flight, or freeze. And talking about it doesn't necessarily do that.
Okay. Breathing,
eye movements, tapping, vagus nerve exercises that you can find on YouTube with no problem. All of these somatic exercises, these are all wonderful ways. And guess what? They're also faster than talking about it over and over again.
True.
So you get more relief in the moment too.
That's true. And then, like I said, there's some people who like talking and some people who don't. You know, can you break down the fight, flight,
freeze, or fawn?
Yeah.
And it's moved from 3 to 4 now.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, so fawn is now being talked about, and a fawn response is that kind of people pleasing. If I get really anxious, like if something happens and I feel like my partner's mad at me, one way I could respond is to start people pleasing. I'm so sorry. What did I do? What can I do for you? So we kind of fawn over someone because we think that's the only way that we can calm ourselves and that will be accepted. Now, another person might.
Hold up.
You want to stay with fawn?
That fawn was me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that fawn was me, looking for love. Did not want anybody to leave me. Okay, I'll go along to get along just so I can have you in my. Oh my good, I did not know you helped me today. My goodness.
Good.
But we can go on with something else. But that was good. I wanted people to really understand that fawn, because that's a lot of people nowadays.
And a lot of women really fall into this category.
Correct.
The people pleasers, the codependent people, things like that.
Correct.
So fight is pretty much what you think. So your partner's angry about something and you meet them in kind of, I'm going to fight you, whether it's verbally. I'm not saying physically necessarily at all, but just that's the energy you come with as an automatic response to what you perceive as danger in any way: physical danger, emotional danger, psychological danger. And then freeze is again kind of that I don't know what to do. I'm overwhelmed by your anger, but I'm just going to make myself small. And literally, often the person feels like they're not breathing, they're not moving, and that is something that's a very common response to sexual assault, which can be very confusing in this field, because especially to women. So women can often feel shame if they did not fight their, the person who was assaulting them.
Okay.
But it is a very normal response to completely freeze. And sometimes that is the smartest thing you could possibly do. Right? So if a bear came, you could fight the bear, or you could freeze and not move. And often the bear will move along.
Correct.
So I want to normalize the freeze response specifically for sexual assault.
Okay.
Because people are completely confused why the person didn't fight. And sometimes that automatic response is to simply freeze to keep themselves safer.
Okay.
So fight, flight. Well, flight is to leave, right?
Correct.
I'm getting the hell out of here.
Correct.
So those are the 4 responses, and it can be helpful to think about which one do I tend toward, or which one do I tend toward in different relationships.
That's good.
Right?
That's
like,
good.
oh, well, I'm going to fight my sister. But when my wife is upset, I'm fawning all the time. And that really tells you a lot about that relationship. And it's good to know.
Wow. Listen, y'all, we talking to Miss Brooke Bralove today. She is a licensed clinical social worker, amongst other things, but she is mastering accelerated resolution therapy. So better known as ART. So when a person first comes in to ART, okay, do you tell them that we're not going to be talking?
Yeah, so I speak to them on the phone. There's sort of 3 questions that you need to ask before you do art with someone. One is, are they able to move their eyes back and forth?
Okay.
Is there any reason they medically can't do that? The second is, can they hold a thought in their head for, a few minutes at a time? And third is, are they motivated to change? And that's the most important.
Yes.
That is the most important, because I find that sometimes people who've had, chronic PTSD, chronic depression, anxiety, they actually have a hard time giving it up because it is so familiar. And it's, the water they've been swimming in for so long.
Oh my goodness, you are in my therapy session. That I had one where My therapist showed me all my relationships, and 95% of them was fractured. And that's why I lived in the fractured part of I never got to living in the healed part because I was familiar with the fracture.
Yeah.
That is good.
And it's important to understand we're not saying you like that pattern.
Correct.
But we gravitate toward what is familiar, and our brain keeps gravitating toward what is familiar because it's comfortable. And we go, oh, I recognize that. I had that when I was younger, or that person's very similar to my mom. And I'm used to, being emotionally neglected. So this emotional neglect now, I'm just used to it. So I'll gravitate toward it. And you have to be, that's why you have to be so conscious, and you do need to really understand yourself around patterns. That's where, psychodynamic therapy, talking, looking at patterns, looking at the way our unconscious makes decisions for us and we don't even know. That is where talk therapy is incredibly useful and important. And that I don't think will ever go away as being an important thing.
Wow. I want to hop on that last thing you said about the 3 questions you asked. What's the third one?
Are you motivated to change?
Are you motivated to change? Now, if they come and say no, at this particular time, I'm not motivated to change, what is your response?
Then art won't work for you. Let me know when that shifts. I'd be happy to work with you.
And I like that, because what you're not going to say, oh, yes, you are. Oh, no, you're ready. Come on. No, I like that you, okay. Because they're not going to be receptive, because now they feel like they fawning right now.
Right. And I will say, like, I had a guy who during the intake at the end said, I'm a little bit afraid that I won't be able to give up my depression, or that somehow it's become such a part of my identity. And I said, okay, I could hear that's a fear, but I also hear you really want to try. And so we did 2 sessions, and it became very clear that he's super afraid of having hope that he'll feel better, or even being able to picture feeling better. And so what I said is, actually, that now has to be the focus of the art. About what you're actually afraid of. And that's what we'll focus on before we can actually work on the depression itself. And we'll see how he does. There's no guarantee.
Correct.
But also even helping somebody identify what's blocking them can then be useful for them to work on. And if at any point in the future they're ready, they'll come back.
That's good. So we're talking to Miss Brooke Bralove. So you are licensed where?
So I'm licensed in DC, Maryland, and Virginia. And I can do art in person and also virtually. It actually works just as well virtually. Not every art therapist likes to do it virtually, but I've had 2 clients who've done both in person and virtual, and they both report that it's equally effective. I think I prefer in person, but I prefer regular talk therapy in person. That's just my preference. I like to see the whole body. I like to be with people, right? I'm not a therapist who sit behind a computer all day. In fact, that's the opposite of what I wanted to do. I wanted to be with people, and you can feel them more, but it absolutely works extremely well virtually. I just use a program that has kind of a ball that, or a dot that just goes back and forth, and they just sit at, laptop, and they just move their eyes back and forth.
And see, the thing about art that I'm not going to say people will, because I can't, but they would be like, that's so simple. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be huge and you crying and you got tissue all on the floor and you woe is me. And no, it can be as simple as what you're saying you have to do.
Yeah. And we can imagine that they've already done the crying and the
Okay.
talking, right?
Okay.
So if somebody's getting to me, it's not usually because they've never done therapy.
Okay.
They've never spoken about this. They've never, they've usually tried a few other things, or I'm getting a lot of doctors are starting to refer to me because they're seeing something either with a chronic illness or some sort of medical problem.
Okay.
And they then assess that there's probably trauma behind it, or the patient actually says, like, I'm pretty sure this is from this. And then they'll send them my way. And
Okay.
that is really helpful. Getting, regular primary care doctors to make a link between what they're seeing and trauma.
That's good. What they're seeing and trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And there's a lot of times a big link.
No, go ahead. I mean, and you can speak on that if you feel like it.
Well, again, what we talked about, this idea that the body keeps the score. And I'll give you a perfect example.
Okay.
I did a virtual session with a woman who actually said she wanted to work on her mother wound. So her mother had repeatedly exposed her to men who sexually abused her throughout her entire childhood.
Okay.
And she's, in her 50s. And she wanted to heal from that. So we did a 60-minute session. And she felt amazing and hopeful and could no longer see those traumatic images. I mean, she just did great. And that would have been successful enough. So at the beginning of the session, she was a 10 out of 10 in terms of the intensity of her anxiety, shame, guilt, all these things. At the end, she was a 0, and that would have been enough. But she had also had cancer a year and a half to 2 years before.
Okay.
And had a tumor removed from her head. And it had left really bad TMJ and numbness in her face. During the session, by the end of the session, she could move her jaw comfortably around, and all the feeling came back in her face from the cancer.
Wow.
And so she said, I had no idea the cancer was related to this. But she made that connection because we healed the mother wound. We healed that sexual abuse trauma, and her body responded in a positive way. She also reported that for years she had been running a hot temperature.
Okay.
She needed fans on her. Her actual temperature was, above normal all the time as baseline. She reported a week later that her body temperature had completely cooled off and she was no longer hot.
Wow. So, I mean, hey. That is good. Listen, Ms. Brooke, thank you for being here with us. Thank you for giving us this knowledge that we have. And I just want to say, if you can just say something to one person who is thinking about any type of therapy, what would you say to them?
We are not meant to do this life alone. We are hardwired for connection, and we need to heal in connection with other people.
That's good. That's good. Now, if you can give out your social media, if you don't mind, give out your social media. I'm going to put your website is www.brookebralove.com. I asked you to do it, and I did it myself. It's that military. But you can go ahead and give out your other information.
Yeah, so obviously you can find information about me on my website, but you can also follow me on Instagram at Brooke Bralove Psychotherapy. Same thing on Facebook, and TikTok is at B Bralove Psychotherapy.
All right, and you can find all the information. And I just want to say to everybody, even though we're doing these podcasts, this does not take the place of you seeking other type of therapy, okay? We're just here to give you a resource that you can have. And I want to say, Ms. Brooke, thank you. And right now, you are released from the stigma-free zone. Thank you.
Thank you.